This irate farmer on a dirt road that I'd hardly ever been on before. I couldn't see myself winning that one. So I said, no, mate, I'm not going anywhere. So poor Dad, he had to get out the car, and I could see him being a bit dejected, and he got out the car, and he headed off towards the farmer. But I had full confidence in my dad. I reckon he could talk his way out of anything. Now, I bet while he was walking down there, he was probably thinking through his head madly, what am I going to say to this farmer? And I bet Mum was in the back seat praying and praying and praying that he'd get out of jail. Well, a little while, I see Dad coming back, and sure enough, he talked the farmer around. He must have spun him a real story. He told us that he said to the farmer, you know, this is a magnificent example of old farmhouses. I'm really interested in this sort of stuff. Must have made out he was some sort of historian or something. I don't know. But anyway, by the time he finished, the farmer was eaten out of his hand. And so he came back and we went on the rest of the day. Now, why am I telling you this? Is it to show you that my siblings and I were brought up by delinquent parents? No. Nothing like that. It's to demonstrate, I think, what we all here know, that Dad really has the art of talking. Some people call it the gift of the gab. But I think it's more than that. It's not just gabbing for the sake of gabbing. And as you read the Maverick's Roundup, which we're here to launch today, I think you'll get that idea too. That it's not just the gift of the gab. That there is a purpose to Dad's talking. There's a purpose to Dad's gift. And I'm sure that as you read the book, you'll see what that purpose is. So this is basically what this book's about. The Maverick's Roundup is Dad's story. It's the story of his life. But not only does my dad love storytelling, not only is it a gift to Dad, but I think Dad's practiced it all his life. Everywhere he's been, no matter where he's been, he's practiced that gift of storytelling. And the reason that he's done that is he's used it to open people up in relating with them. You know how you can come up to people sometimes and like there's a stone wall, like the irate farmer. And Dad uses that ability of storytelling to reach out and contact with people and to become a part of their world. And he does that through the storytelling. And he's done that to disarm people and maybe their preconceived ideas about him or about his spiritual walk, about his God. And he uses the stories to disarm them. And that ranges from a whole range of people. In Whyalla, he used it with a big brass. Or even back if you read the story, even back in the Riverland, in dealing with the government officials associated with the Aboriginal missions. But it was right from the big brass down to the people that society had forgotten. It was from he was talking about the public speaking club that he was involved in Whyalla. And there was the BHP executives. He mingled with those. He told his funny stories in his speeches. We used to get repeats of them at tea time at night. And from that down to the operators in the rolling mill pulpits. He would tell his stories there. He would mix with the men there. It was from the engineering workshop in Glossop, where he built guillotines and sheds and learnt his welding trade, down to kids' clubs in the primary schools. There was a whole range of people that he used his storytelling ability to break down the barriers and to get in close to people and to present the gospel of Jesus Christ to them. But there was more than just relating to people. I believe there's a reason for this gift of the gab, as you might call it. Very early in chapter 2 of the book, Dad develops the idea of what he says is the call. Now, I'll leave you to read the book. I'm not going to tell you everything about the book, otherwise that'd be very disappointing for you. So exactly what the call is, you can read it yourself. But to quote Dad from chapter 2, he says, "The call was for me, with my family, to preach, teach and lead." That was the call that he had from a very early age, and that I believe he still has, as he said in his talk earlier. And this theme is weaved right through the book. Another thing that Dad develops in the book is what he calls his toolbox. It starts with his carpentry back in Mount Compass days, where his mum and dad sent him off to Adelaide to learn the carpentry trade. But then it progresses through the fruit blocks in the Riverland, where he took up the signature and learned how to prove. It goes through the welding period, where he learned how to weld in the engineering workshops. This was his toolbox, if you like, the tools that he used throughout his life. He went into buildings and shop fronts, aluminium shop fronts. He then did public speaking in the way of it. It was penguins, wasn't it?
Oh,
Rostrum, that's right. Penguins was the lady, I think, wasn't it?
thank you.
He didn't go to penguins, that's right. He did security guarding, tree lopping. And then even here in Port Augusta, he became involved in the arid land gardens. And that, I guess, is the toolbox he's using now. At home, he's doing his native garden nursery and he's selling his plants. But it wasn't just toolbox for toolbox's sake. There was a reason. And that reason was to support the poor. Every one of those areas of picking up tools, different tools, he used in how to get and relate with people. He became one with the people that he was using the tools with. And so even now, that call goes on. In Dad's words, he says, the call has made us prisoners, and we cannot escape until we have relocated to be with the Lord in person. I think he's saying in the box. That's what he said before, wasn't it? Now, with all this talk about call, please don't think that the Maverick Roundup is one of these boring, religious, spiritual books. Might sound a bit like that, but no, it's not. It's a very easily read story about a man's life. My wife said it's one of those stories of a larrikin. There was that Australian larrikin theme going through it, if you like. And so, don't get put off, I guess, by this, what I'm calling the call, or Dad's called the call. It is a good yarn. It's a very good story. And I'm just saying that as a son, okay? Now, while this story is written through Dad's eyes, it's very obviously a story of joint labour of love between Mum and Dad. Dad's the raw material. Mum's the refiner, if you like, who puts the story together. Mum's done a very good job, because I can still hear Dad's words coming through. I can still hear his phraseology. And sometimes at home, I come out with some of these phrases, and my kids say, "Where did you get that from?" Well, it's Pop. That's where I got it from. Dad's phraseology is right through the book, and it's certainly not one of these religious treatises. It is a readable yarn by a good Aussie. So, in saying that it's a joint labour of love between Mum and Dad, in chapter 2, Dad gets this across very early. He was talking about a time when him and Mum were moving into the area of the spiritual gifts. And Dad writes of Mum, "That wife of mine was bothering God during the day, and when I came home from work, I tried to keep up with her." And you can see here that there was this thing going on between the two of them, where they were going hand in hand in moving forward in the call. The call wasn't just Dad. The call was Mum and Dad. They were working at it together. Now, if Dad says that, where he says there, when he got home he tried to keep up with Mum, Dad was no slouch when it came to his dealings with God. So Mum must have been lightning quick. And I know that for sure. I remember Dad talks about Mum developing a dressmaking business in Barnbury, quite a successful one with the Greek women there. I didn't know about Greek women because we were at school. All we knew was that Mum was making dresses for somebody. But anyway, she had this successful dress business. But I remember once coming home from school one day and Mum was absolutely stressed out. And not knowing really quite why, us kids sort of tiptoed around a bit. And then when Dad gets home, we find out why. Somewhere during that day, Mum had made some mistake in this dress. And Dad was called in to help work out this problem. And so that evening was spent between Mum and Dad having very intense conversation on how to fix this problem. And the problem must have got fixed because neither of them ended up in jail or anything. But the Greek community didn't come after it. But I think that shows how these two work together. In all the issues in life, all the problems in life, they were there in it together. And that comes out in the book quite a bit, that there is two here working together. Ladies and gentlemen, let me commend this book into your hands, the Maverick's Roundup. Let me commend it into your minds, not just into your hands. As you read it, it is a story to inspire you to follow your own call. Your call is going to be vastly different to Dad and Mum's, but you've got your own. That isn't the point that it's different. We're all different. Read the story, hear the story, and be encouraged to follow your own call. The spoken form of Dad's call has now taken a written form. I don't know that he ever thought that he'd ever get to this point of putting his story in print, because he's been one of those oral speakers, verbal speakers. But here it is. And now it has the ability, I believe, to go beyond where Dad